They forced us back. I set up a DJ booth in my cubicle. The sound of corporate oppression has a specific frequency. It's the quiet hum of fluorescent lights, the muffled tap of keyboards, the whispered complaints around the water cooler that never quite reach management's ears. I'd escaped it for 2 beautiful years, working from my apartment with my cat Luna, judging my spreadsheets and my coffee always perfectly brewed. Then came the email that changed everything. Mandatory return to office policy, effective immediately. That's when Olivia Parker, mild-mannered financial analyst at Pinnacle Enterprises, decided that if they wanted me back in the office, they'd get all of me, including my newfound passion for electronic dance music and my beginner's DJ equipment. They had no idea what they'd unleashed. I'd been hired during the pandemic, interviewed over Zoom in my neatly pressed blouse and sweatpants, promised that Pinnacle valued work-life balance and employee well-being. For 2 years, I delivered exceptional results from my home office, met every deadline, attended every virtual meeting. My productivity scores were in the top percentile. My team loved me. My boss, Veronica Willis, regularly praised my work ethic. And yet, there I was, reading an email from our CEO, Richard Thornton, claiming that company culture and collaborative synergy required our physical presence, no exceptions, no hybrid options, 5 days a week, 9 to 5, back in our beige cubicles under the soul-sucking fluorescence. This is ridiculous, I muttered to Luna, who blinked her green eyes slowly in agreement. They can't just upend our lives because Richard misses seeing his little worker bees buzzing around. But they could, and they did. The night before my forced return, I sat in my apartment surrounded by boxes. I'd have to move closer to the office now. My peaceful 2-hour-a-day podcast and audiobook commute would become an impossible 4-hour daily drive. As I packed up my life, I spotted my DJ controller, a birthday gift from my brother who thought my pandemic hobby of making playlists needed an upgrade. "What am I going to do with you now?" I asked the sleek piece of equipment. "I'll never have time to practice anymore." That's when the idea hit me. If they wanted me in the office so badly, they'd get the full Olivia experience, including my terrible attempts at mixing beats. On my first day back, I arrived early. DJ controller tucked discreetly in my tote bag along with a small portable speaker. Nothing too obvious yet. I needed to test the waters, understand the new landscape. The office was as depressing as I remembered. An open floor plan divided by fabric cubicles in various shades of taupe. The carpet, once a neutral gray, had developed mysterious stains during the abandoned pandemic years. My cubicle was in a corner. Thankfully, my nameplate was still there, gathering dust. Olivia Parker, financial analyst. How boring. It should have read Olivia Parker, future revenge DJ extraordinaire. "Olivia, welcome back." Veronica's voice was artificially bright as she approached, her heels clicking aggressively on the worn carpet. "Isn't it wonderful to be together again?" I smiled my best corporate smile. Absolutely thrilling. That's the spirit. Team meeting at 10 to discuss our return to office protocols and expectations. As soon as she left, I began setting up my cubicle, computer, notebooks, pens, all the usual office supplies, and tucked just under my desk, within easy reach but out of immediate sight, my DJ controller, not yet plugged in, just waiting. The meeting was everything I expected. Richard droning on about face-to-face collaboration while people checked their phones under the table. Veronica nodding enthusiastically at every corporate platitude, and various colleagues looking as thrilled to be back as one might be for a root canal. Additionally, Richard continued, "We've updated the Office Policy Handbook. You'll find the revised version in your email. Pay special attention to the section on workplace conduct and noise levels." My ears perked up at that. Noise levels? How interesting. Back at my desk, I immediately pulled up the handbook. Section 12.3, Workplace Etiquette. There it was, a paragraph about maintaining a professional auditory environment. Specifically, employees should refrain from playing music or audio content without headphones. If headphones are used, volume should be kept at a reasonable level so as not to distract colleagues. Nothing about DJ equipment, nothing about beat mixing corporate-approved playlists. Just a vague directive about headphones and reasonable levels. I smiled to myself. Corporate policies always have loopholes if you look hard enough. That first week, I was the model employee. I arrived precisely on time, took exactly 1 hour for lunch, and left at 5 p.m. sharp. I participated in pointless meetings, nodded at appropriate moments, and kept any sarcastic comments firmly behind my teeth. I even brought donuts on Friday, earning appreciative nods from colleagues I barely knew. But I was watching, learning, cataloging every little irritation and inefficiency created by this mandatory return. The wasted commute time, the endless distractions of colleagues discussing weekend plans, the uncomfortable office chair that made my back ache after years of working from my ergonomic home setup, the pathetic excuse for coffee in the break room. I also noted who seemed equally unhappy to be back. Jordan from accounting, whose childcare costs had doubled. Maya from marketing, who'd moved 2 hours away during the pandemic for affordable housing. Sam from IT, who worked better at night but was now forced into morning meetings where he could barely keep his eyes open. My allies were everywhere, even if they didn't know it yet. In week 2, I made my first move. Small, subtle, just testing the boundaries. I brought in my portable speaker and played low background music at my desk. Nothing disruptive, just pleasant ambient electronic music without lyrics. When Veronica walked by, I quickly turned it down and smiled. "Sorry, does that bother you? I find it helps me focus." She hesitated, then shrugged. "It's fine as long as it's not too loud. Some of the others might complain, though." "Of course, I'll keep it down." As soon as she left, I sent an email to the entire financial analysis team. "Hey everyone, I've been playing some background music to help with focus. If it's distracting anyone, please let me know and I'll use headphones instead. If you're interested in this productivity hack, here's a link to the playlist I'm using." By lunch, 5 colleagues had thanked me for the playlist. By day's end, the subtle sounds of ambient electronic music drifted from at least 8 cubicles around the floor. Phase 1 complete. The next week, I upgraded to headphones with a microphone, explaining to anyone who asked that I was taking an online course in audio engineering to enhance my data presentation skills. I'd put on the headphones, open my DJ software, and practice mixing while completing my financial reports. To the outside observer, I was just an unusually rhythmic typist. My commute became my research time. I studied office pranks, passive-aggressive workplace behaviors, and the legalities of protest actions. I knew I needed to be careful. I wasn't looking to get fired, just to make a point about the absurdity of forcing remote workers back for no good reason. By the end of the month, I had assembled a coalition of like-minded colleagues. We didn't call ourselves that, of course. Officially, we were the Office Culture Enhancement Committee, approved by an oblivious HR department who thought we wanted to plan birthday celebrations and team-building exercises. In reality, we were planning something much more interesting. The policy doesn't specifically prohibit music in common areas if it's for cultural enrichment. Maya pointed out during our first covert meeting in a coffee shop 3 blocks from the office. And there's nothing against decorating our cubicles to improve workplace morale, added Jordan. Sam grinned. Plus, I can adjust the settings on the conference room booking system. Give us some flexibility. I laid out my grand vision, and they loved it. Operation Audio-Visual Rebellion was born. The next day, I brought in a slightly larger speaker and a few LED light strips. Nothing fancy, just enough to give my cubicle a soft purple glow and provide slightly better sound quality for my focus music. When questioned, I explained that the lighting reduced my eye strain from screen glare, true, and that the music helped me concentrate, also true. I had medical documentation about the benefits of both, courtesy of my cousin who worked as an occupational therapist. Everything was perfectly reasonable and within policy guidelines. Other members of our secret committee began making similar modifications to their workspaces. A Himalayan salt lamp here, a desktop waterfall there, some plants, some personal photos. Nothing unusual for an office, except for the coordinated effort behind it. We were changing the environment one small step at a time, creating a space that actually supported our work rather than hindering it. By week 6, my cubicle had evolved considerably. The LED strips had multiplied, now programmed to shift colors subtly with the tempo of the music. My speaker had been upgraded twice more, still not unreasonably loud, but with much better sound quality. I'd added a small electric essential oil diffuser with peppermint for mental clarity. I was also now openly using my DJ controller during lunch breaks, headphones plugged in, creating mixes that I shared with my growing group of supporters. It's my stress relief, I explained when Veronica raised an eyebrow. Helps me reset for the afternoon. Much healthier than doom scrolling on my phone, don't you think? She couldn't argue with that logic. Our committee had grown to 15 members across various departments. We communicated via a private Discord server, sharing ideas and coordinating our gradual transformation of the office environment. We weren't breaking any rules, we were just creatively interpreting them. The real test came when we implemented Phase 2, the conference room revolution. Pinnacle had 6 conference rooms of varying sizes, all equipped with large screens for presentations and video calls. Sam had discovered that the audio-visual systems could be accessed remotely if you had the right permissions, which, as the IT guy, he absolutely did. Each room has its own distinct Bluetooth name, he explained during a committee lunch meeting. I've created a simple app that lets us connect to any room system from our phones. We can queue up music, videos, whatever, and it'll look like it's part of the scheduled presentation. What about the meeting schedule? Jordan asked. That's the best part. Sam grinned. I've added a ghost calendar entry to each room for 15 minutes before and after every scheduled meeting. To the booking system, those times appear taken, but they don't show up on anyone's personal calendar. So we have a buffer period where we control the AV system, and no one can trace it back to us? Maya clarified. Exactly. It's all anonymous and technically within the system parameters. I couldn't help but admire Sam's elegant solution. This is perfect for Operation Audiovisual Rebellion. The following Monday, our plan went into action. At 8:45 a.m., 15 minutes before the weekly management meeting in Conference Room A, the speakers suddenly came to life with the gentle, opening beats of a lo-fi study playlist. The screen displayed a simple visualization of sound waves in calming blues and purples. When the management team entered, they paused, confused by the unexpected ambiance. Richard looked particularly perplexed but seemed reluctant to admit he didn't know how to turn it off. The meeting proceeded with quiet background music that somehow made everyone a little more relaxed and focused. Throughout the day, every conference room experienced similar technical anomalies. Sometimes it was gentle jazz, other times nature sounds, occasionally classic rock at a tasteful volume. The visualizations ranged from peaceful nature scenes to abstract patterns that pulsed with the music. By Wednesday, people were arriving early to meetings just to enjoy the pre-meeting atmosphere. By Friday, several department heads had asked ET if they could get the new presentation templates for their own use. Sam, deadpan, told them it was an automated system update, and he'd look into making it user-accessible. The most surprising development came the following week when Richard himself requested that the ambient soundscapes continue during the executive briefings as they seemed to improve attention spans. Our rebellion was working, but in a way none of us had anticipated. Instead of annoying management into reconsidering the return-to-office mandate, we were actually making the office more bearable for everyone. That wasn't the plan at all. We need to escalate, I announced during our next committee meeting. They're adapting too quickly. What did you have in mind? Maya asked, looking both nervous and excited. I pulled out my tablet and showed them the schematics for what I called the Cubicle transformation. Is that a DJ booth? Jordan squinted at the screen. A modular, collapsible, completely policy-compliant DJ booth. I confirmed. Built entirely from approved office supplies and personal items allowed under the workplace personalization guidelines. The plan was audacious but technically within bounds. The employee handbook stated that personal workspace customization is permitted provided it does not permanently alter company property, create safety hazards, or prevent the employee from performing their duties. My design used removable shelving units, my own equipment, cable management solutions that attached with non-damaging methods, and lighting that plugged into permitted power sources. During regular work hours, everything would be configured in its most minimal state. But during lunch breaks and the official wellness periods that HR had recently implemented, ironically, at our committee's suggestion, the full setup could be deployed. This is either genius or career suicide, Sam said finally. Maybe both, I admitted. But I've reviewed every line of the employee handbook, and there's nothing that specifically prohibits this setup as long as it doesn't interfere with my work performance, which it won't, because my productivity numbers have actually increased since I started incorporating music into my workflow. It was true. Despite, or perhaps because of, my rebellious activities, my work quality had improved. I was processing financial analyses faster and with greater accuracy than before. My dashboards were clearer, my presentations more engaging. I'd even received a commendation from a client who appreciated the unexpected creativity in my quarterly report design. The committee voted unanimously to proceed with the Cubicle transformation. Construction began gradually. First, I rearranged my desk to create more usable surface area. Then I added a simple shelf unit for better organization. My computer monitor was mounted on an adjustable arm to reduce neck strain. Cable management solutions were installed to improve safety and prevent tripping hazards. Piece by piece, component by component, my cubicle evolved. Each addition was small enough not to raise immediate concerns, but the cumulative effect was remarkable. Within 3 weeks, I had effectively built a collapsible DJ booth that could transition from professional workspace to music station in under 2 minutes. The first official deployment happened during a Tuesday lunch break. I'd sent a casual invitation to my growing list of allies. Taking a mental health moment in Cubicle E42, bringing some vibes to beat the Tuesday blues. Drop by if you need a mood boost. At precisely 12:15, I transformed my workspace. The monitor swung up and away, revealing the DJ controller underneath. The shelf unit rotated to display the upgraded speaker system. LED lights shifted from work-appropriate white to an energetic blue and purple pattern. I plugged in my equipment, opened my software, and began a carefully prepared set of upbeat but office-appropriate electronic music. I expected maybe 5 or 6 people to stop by, curious about the commotion. Instead, within 10 minutes, there was a crowd of at least 20 gathered around and in the neighboring cubicles. People from departments I'd never even interacted with appeared, drawn by the music and the unexpected break in routine. "Is this allowed?" whispered a woman from legal whom I recognized but had never spoken to. "Technically, yes," I replied, not missing a beat as I smoothly transitioned between tracks. Personal expression during designated break periods, it's all in the handbook. She looked impressed. Nice loophole exploitation. By 12:45, I'd turned the volume down and begun the transformation back to regular workspace. As people reluctantly returned to their desks, I heard numerous comments. "That was the best lunch break I've had in years. Are you doing this again tomorrow?" I didn't know financial analysts could be so cool. Mission accomplished. I had disrupted the status quo without breaking any rules. I had created a moment of joy in the beige hellscape of corporate conformity. I had reminded people that we were humans, not just productivity units. But I had also attracted attention. At 2:17 p.m., an email arrived from Veronica. "My office, 3 p.m. We need to discuss appropriate workplace behavior." I forwarded the email to our committee's Discord server with just one comment: "The Empire strikes back." Messages of support immediately flooded in. "We've got your back. She can't point to any policy violation. If they fire you, we all walk." That last one surprised me. The sentiment was appreciated, but I'd never intended for anyone else to risk their job over my rebellion. This was my battle. At 3 p.m. sharp, I knocked on Veronica's office door. A printed copy of the employee handbook tucked under my arm. Come in, Olivia. Her voice was carefully neutral. I entered to find not just Veronica, but also Richard and Karen from HR, the executive firing squad, assembled and ready. Please, sit down. Richard gestured to the lone chair facing the three of them. I sat, keeping my expression pleasant but not submissive. Is everything all right? That depends on your perspective. Richard began. It's come to our attention that you've been engaging in some unusual activities in your workspace. I've been personalizing my environment to optimize my productivity. Yes, I replied calmly. Page 34 of the Employee Handbook specifically encourages employees to create a workspace that supports their individual work style and needs. Karen frowned slightly. There's a difference between a family photo and a nightclub setup. Is there? The policy doesn't specify acceptable forms of personalization beyond safety concerns and permanent alterations, neither of which apply to my setup. I opened the handbook to the relevant page. I'd be happy to review the specific policy you feel I've violated. Richard's jaw tightened. This isn't about technical violations, Olivia. It's about the spirit of professional conduct. With all due respect, sir, spirit isn't enforceable unless it's codified in policy. And if we're discussing professional conduct, I'd like to point out that my productivity metrics have increased by 22% since implementing my new workspace arrangement. My client satisfaction scores are at an all-time high. I completed the Westridge analysis 3 days ahead of schedule. Veronica looked uncomfortable. That's true, but additionally, I continued. I've only used my complete setup during designated break periods, which falls under permissible personal time activities. During work hours, my cubicle is configured for optimal task performance. Karen leaned forward. The issue isn't just your cubicle, Olivia. It's the disruption to the wider office environment. Several employees have complained about the noise and the crowds around your area. This was the moment I'd been waiting for. May I see those complaints, please? I've been collecting feedback as well, and the responses have been overwhelmingly positive. In fact, I have signed statements from 32 colleagues indicating that these brief musical interludes have improved their mental well-being and afternoon productivity. I placed a folder on the desk containing printed surveys, comments, and productivity data that our committee had been meticulously gathering. The scientific approach had been Maya's idea. Fight corporate with corporate, she'd said. Richard, Veronica, and Karen exchanged glances. This clearly wasn't going according to their plan. Olivia. Richard tried again, his tone shifting to something almost paternal. We appreciate creativity and initiative, but there need to be boundaries. The office isn't the place for whatever this is. With respect, that's precisely my point. I replied. For 2 years, I performed my job exceptionally well from home, where I could create an environment that supported my work style. I had autonomy over my space, my schedule, and my methods. The company benefited from my increased productivity and satisfaction. I leaned forward slightly. Then you mandated a return to an environment designed in the 1980s for a workforce with different needs and expectations. You prioritized control over results. So yes, I've brought elements of my optimized workspace here, and the data shows it's working, not just for me, but for others as well. The room fell silent for a moment. Karen was reviewing the documents I'd provided with increasing interest. Veronica looked conflicted. Richard's expression was unreadable. Finally, Richard spoke. What exactly is it you want, Olivia? An excellent question. In the beginning, this had been about petty revenge, about making a point. But somewhere along the way, it had evolved into something more significant. I want what everyone wants, to do my best work in an environment that supports rather than hinders that goal. For some, that's the traditional office. For others, it's home. For many, it's a flexible combination of both. I gestured to the data in my folder. The evidence suggests that rigid, one-size-fits-all policies reduce morale, productivity, and retention. My little rebellion has inadvertently created a natural experiment that demonstrates how personalization and autonomy improve outcomes. So you turned your cubicle into a DJ booth to prove a point about remote work? Veronica asked, sounding both irritated and impressed. I turned my cubicle into a space that works for me, just as I did with my home office. The DJ element was, perhaps a bit theatrical, but effective in highlighting the absurdity of forcing everyone back into an environment that many find less productive than their alternatives. Richard sat back in his chair, studying me with new interest. You've certainly gone to extraordinary lengths to make your case. Sometimes extraordinary circumstances require extraordinary responses, I replied. Karen closed my folder. The survey data is compelling, I have to admit, and there haven't been any formal complaints filed, just some grumbling from middle management about maintaining order. The three of them exchanged looks again, some unspoken communication passing between them. Here's what we're going to do. Richard finally said, you'll scale back the lunchtime concerts to twice a week, with advance notice to the floor. Keep the volume reasonable. In exchange, we'll establish a committee to review our current workplace policies, including the possibility of flexible work arrangements based on role requirements and individual performance. He fixed me with a stern look. And you'll be on that committee, channeling this creative energy into constructive policy recommendations rather than guerrilla office transformation. Acceptable? It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Yes, that's acceptable. Good. We'll announce the committee next week. Until then, keep the DJ booth minimal. As I stood to leave, Veronica added, and Olivia, next time you have concerns about company policy, perhaps start with a conversation rather than a revolution. I smiled. Where's the fun in that? Walking back to my cubicle, I felt a strange mix of victory and anticlimax. I'd set out to make a point, to create enough disruption that management would reconsider their rigid stance. Instead, I'd accidentally created community, gathered data, and earned a seat at the policy-making table. My phone buzzed with messages from the committee. What happened? Are you fired? Do we need to execute the backup plan? I quickly updated them on the outcome, ending with, Phase 3. Infiltrate the system and change it from within. The responses were immediate and enthusiastic. This wasn't the end of our campaign. It was just the beginning of a new approach. Over the following months, the newly formed Workplace Flexibility and Innovation Committee, yes, Richard insisted on the corporate-friendly name, conducted surveys, compiled research, and developed policy recommendations. We presented case studies from other companies, productivity data, retention statistics, and cost analyses. To his credit, Richard actually listened. He challenged our assumptions, asked difficult questions, and demanded evidence. But he listened. 6 months after my DJ booth confrontation, Pinnacle Enterprises announced its new flexible work policy. 3 categories of roles based on work requirements. Category A required regular office presence due to specific needs. Category B allowed hybrid arrangements with core in-office days for collaboration. Category C was results-based, with location flexibility as long as performance metrics were met. Most of the financial analysis team, including me, fell into Category C. I kept my apartment and resumed working primarily from home, with Luna back on supervision duty. But interestingly, I found myself going into the office voluntarily about once a week, usually on Thursdays, which had organically evolved into Community Day, when most of the former Rebellion committee members came in for collaboration and connection. And yes, I still brought my DJ controller sometimes. The Thursday lunch sessions had become something of an institution, now officially sanctioned as a workplace culture initiative. Even Richard stopped by occasionally, though he steadfastly refused all requests to try his hand at mixing. My cubicle remained transformed, a symbol of the larger changes we'd achieved. The LED lights stayed, though they were usually set to professional white when I wasn't actively DJing. The modular design allowed for quick transitions between focused work configuration and creative mode. Other employees began customizing their spaces too, not all as dramatically as mine, but each reflecting individual needs and preferences. The once uniform beige landscape became a varied terrain of personalized workspaces, each designed to support its occupants' unique work style. The funny thing was, the office became more vibrant and collaborative precisely because people weren't forced to be there. When people came in, it was purposeful. For specific meetings, collaborative projects, or social connection. The quality of in-person interaction improved dramatically when it became a choice rather than an obligation. A year after the infamous mandatory return to office email, I received a different message from Richard. Olivia, our Q3 results are in, and I thought you'd appreciate the data. Overall productivity up 17%, employee satisfaction up 24%, retention improved by 31% compared to industry average. The flexible work policy you championed has proven more successful than anticipated. I'm still not convinced about the necessity of base drops in financial presentations, but I admit when I'm wrong about the bigger picture. Thanks for the musical rebellion that changed our company culture. Richard, I forwarded the email to our committee's Discord server, which had evolved into a general innovation and culture channel with members from across the company. The responses ranged from triumphant celebration to thoughtful reflection on how far we'd come. Maya summed it up best. From resistance to revolution to reform. Not bad for a bunch of disgruntled office workers with a DJ controller and LED lights. That night, I set up my equipment in my home office, now with an even more elaborate setup than my cubicle had ever had, and mixed a celebratory set. I titled it Corporate Rebellion, From Cubicles to Freedom, and shared it with the committee. As the beats filled my apartment and Luna watched with her usual judgmental gaze, I reflected on the unexpected journey. What had started as petty revenge had become something meaningful. A successful challenge to outdated workplace norms, a community of like-minded colleagues, and genuine organizational change. Sometimes the most effective revolutions don't tear everything down. Sometimes they transform from within, one DJ set at a time. And if Pinnacle ever tried to mandate a full return to office again, well, I had some ideas involving holographic projections and surround sound that would make my cubicle DJ booth look positively restrained by comparison. But that would be a different story.